trailers for sale or rent.
You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony.
Welcome back to Where You Live. We're broadcasting from the Natural Green Lawn and Landscape Studios. We're brought to you by who else other than Extreme Exteriors and American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency. Before we talk about our next story, I want to let our listeners know that we have got something free that we'd like to give you. Free is good, isn't it, Tony?
Often it is.
Free is good. And the free gift that we have for you is a bi-monthly newsletter called What's New. A lot of what we talk about on the show, we talk in further detail. A lot of the people that we have as guests on our show also contribute and write towards that newsletter. It's yours free. All you have to do is give us a call at New Concepts, 952-922-2500. Ask for Lori. She'll make sure that you start receiving your subscription either by email or in the U.S. Postal Service. By mail, that
Yeah,
is.
by mail.
Okay. We have another story here that we're going to turn our attention to, Tony, and this is back at the Minnesota State Legislature. We've been dealing with issues with homeowner associations the last few weeks, with legislators who have in their own mind this idea that they need to be more protective of the individual, and I think that they are the pendulum is swinging, and the individual rights that some are trying to pass, I think, are unbalancing or would unbalance what is taking place.
The rights of the group.
Yes, and that's happening right now in the rental area.
We've also been talking about foreclosure a lot. I just wanted to throw that out there. There's a lot of stuff going on at the legislature about housing right now. And
the one right now that is House File 300, Chief Author, once again, Karen Clark, South Minneapolis. And this deals with a tenant's right during the eviction process.
So she's addressed HOAs and foreclosure. Now she's going to rentals.
Yes.
She's had a busy session.
And the theme here is whoever's gone through a foreclosure, whoever's going through an eviction, they're having hard times, and that may be true.
That's right.
So let's just give them more chances. Let's give them more time. And while I do not mind that sentiment, I think that is something that should be offered by the person who has the ability and has that relationship instead of it being forced upon. Because when I choose to do something for a renter, I'm showing benevolence. I am showing graciousness. When someone is mandating that I do that,
that's right.
Then it's forced. It's coercion, and I think there are unintended consequences that take place.
Specifically, she's saying that she wants it to be a law that the landlord must give the tenant the opportunity to cure the debt before you evict or vacate the property. So we call this a notice to pay or vacate. Mm-hmm. That's what I call it anyway. And I'm in the habit of sending one of those out if someone hasn't paid their rent.
Isn't that standard in the industry anyway?
I think so. I guess I don't know for sure, and perhaps small landlords don't do it. But if someone doesn't pay their rent, I send them a late notice, and then I usually send them a notice to pay or vacate because I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to say in the first late notice, that's the polite notice. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, it seems that you've forgotten to pay your rent. Perhaps it's an oversight. Yeah. Please send me the rent.
So with all of the processes that are in place right now, when someone goes through eviction, mm-hmm. what is the time frame that someone can expect from start to finish if the person does not have the money, does not intend to pay?
Right.
And what is that time?
I think I'm 90% sure that right now legally, if your lease says your rent is due on the 1st and you don't pay it on the 1st, your landlord can file eviction proceedings on the 2nd There's no legal requirement for late notices to be given. There's no legal requirement for grace period to be given. So that's technically the way it is. However, most landlords want to work with their customers,
And by
their
most-
renters, because they want to collect that rent.
And by most worth, I'm thinking 95, 99%
Yes.
of the time, right?
I gotta say, I'm confident in saying that no landlord speciously, maliciously, and without care for lost income just starts filing evictions on people right and left. They have a reason for
Because
filing the eviction.
we're talking that's money out of pocket.
That's right.
Taking
So-
extra time. If they can wait a little bit and work something out, they'd rather do that.
So right now, my process is a 5-day grace period. Your rent isn't even late until after the
Okay.
5th. Then a polite late notice. Then a couple days later, the notice to pay or vacate, which I call the mean notice because
Yeah.
it says you've got X number of days, and there's no legal requirement for how many days right now. You've got X number of days to pay everything you owe me. Here's how much you owe me, or you have to vacate.
Now, here's what's happening with this proposed bill, House File 300, because you can go landlord could go all the way through up to that point. But now the state says, well, we don't believe you that you're going through this. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to require that you go through another notice to cure or vacate, and it's got to be under our auspices, and it's got to be for a 7-day window. So we're saying you've got to give it another week. So no matter what time you've already given up to this point,
That's right.
you now have to give a week. And
An official notice saying that you have 7 days to pay or vacate
you
before the landlord can file an eviction action.
and you show that before you can do the eviction.
That's right.
And once you file the eviction, that we're still talking about a 2-3 week process before you get
a court date.
yes,
That's right.
even
so,
set.
So even when you're working really hard to try and resolve this issue for yourself or for the landlord you work for within the month, it often gets pushed off till the end of the month. Then you're looking at the next month's rent getting involved. Now the landlord's possibly losing 2 months' rent. That's just the reality of the
No,
situation.
I've got some issues with that just from that standpoint, because when you throw things off like that and you're talking about something better than a month, we have legislators who just aren't thinking, and that is
Yeah.
the world of tenancy runs by the first and the end of the month.
That's
and
right.
so if you want or you hope to find someone who's going to be a good renter, a good tenant for you, these are people who are thinking ahead. And if now you're talking about a time frame that probably ends somewhere in the middle of the month, you are looking at another month of that unit being vacant.
That's right.
And,
That's right.
And to me, that is that's untenable, because now you've got to wait longer, and you're putting stress and extra financial burdens on a landlord, especially in this time
And you know
period.
what they never seem to realize is every time you cost the landlord more money, he has to raise his rents because otherwise he can't afford to stay in business, right? So ultimately you're hurting tenants, the good paying tenants, by doing this. This goes further, even further. If your tenant cures their delinquency, they have the right to do it again. They can do this twice, it says,
Twice in a
any
12-month period.
And even more than that, if they've also paid the landlord's attorney fees. So they're basically allowing you gave a good example.
Oh, yes.
You gave a good example of it.
The example is of a parent when they are correcting their child, and you see it all the time. They say, Johnny, I want you to stop that and put that down. Johnny, if you don't, there's going to be consequences. Johnny, I'm going to send you to your room. Johnny, I'm going to count to 10 now, Johnny. And Johnny, are you listening? And I'm counting. I'm beginning, Johnny. 1, 2. And when does Johnny
Comply.
stop? He complies at 10. Why? Because that is when the parent is serious.
John, you've already warned him so many times that he's got all this time before he has
So
to
that's what this bill is
comply.
doing. This
You're
bill
right.
is just
You're right.
prolonging it, saying, tenant, renter, I mean business, I'm going to evict. I really am going to evict now, because here's now another 7 days. Are you serious? Are you listening?
They're not going to. Yeah,
It's treating
crazy.
the tenant, the renter, as a juvenile.
That's right.
Instead of as an adult.
Well, that's how the state looks at them. They need to have everything spelled out to them, and they're handheld walking through everything, and they have to slap the landlord anytime they can. If this goes into effect, Gene, you said you don't think this will even come up this session, right?
No,
but it might next session.
Yes, this it was just introduced in committee last week. The legislature, as far as I know, I have so much on their plate and dealing with so many other things. I think it's not going to go any further, but this is a 2-year session, so it's introduced, so it's something that we should be
watching for next year.
Yeah.
Here's how I'll react. I'll tell you how I'm going to react to this if it passes.
Okay, but why don't you tell us after these messages?